Namaste friends, my name is Amit Garg. Welcome to my channel Ganesha-Hanuman. A very happy and auspicious Basant Panchami to all of you. We celebrate Goddess Saraswati on this day. In India, kids start their formal education on Basant Panchami. And Saraswati is the goddess of wisdom and learning and skills. May we all receive blessings of Ma Saraswati. Om Aim Hrim Klim Maha Saraswatyai Namaha. So today in this video, we'll talk about the transit of Jupiter through the sign of Aries. And that starts on April 21st, 2023. And Jupiter will remain in the sign of Aries through April of 2024. So Jupiter is a slow-moving planet, takes about a year to go through a sign. So this video and these slides will be relevant for this whole period through April of next year, 2024. This video, and as all of my other videos, it's jam-packed with amazing slides and very useful, practical information. And most importantly, I always give you the logic and the reasoning behind whatever I'm saying. And I'll show you all of that on the chart. You'll see it, so you can learn easily. So once you follow some of my videos, you'll be able to put together all these pieces. And let's say if you go to an astrologer to get a reading, you'll be better prepared. You'll be able to ask very intelligent questions. You'll understand more. Keep in mind though, so this video will talk about Jupiter's transit in the sign of Aries for all 12 rising signs. But you have to look at your own chart, natal chart, the placement of Jupiter in the chart, how the sign of Aries is in your chart. So all of those things and your dasha, mahadasha that you're running, those things will modify the results. But we'll talk about generic effect of Jupiter going through the sign of Aries. In my previous videos, I've explained how you want to analyze any planet in any sign in any house. So essentially, you just look at the planet, modify the qualities of the planet based on the sign it's placed in, because sign is the environment, and then add the qualities of the house it is placed in. So the house depends on the rising sign. So each of the rising sign will look at the, we'll see which house Jupiter will be in when it's going through the sign of Aries. But the first two things, so the planet and the sign, we'll talk about that. We'll start with that. So Jupiter is the planet of hope. Jupiter is the guru, is the Brihaspati. He is the guru of the gods. He's the advisor to the king. Jupiter represents the ether element, the space, the expansion, the growth, the luck, the children, the things we give birth to, our creativity. So all of the rituals that we do, the dharma that we perform, and having a very positive attitude. So all of that is represented by Jupiter, and our wealth also. Now, Jupiter has been in the sign of Pisces for a while now, and Jupiter rules the sign of Pisces. But Pisces is very different from Aries. So Jupiter will be entering Aries in April. Pisces is a very intuitive sign. You want to dream big. You want to help people through intuition, through meditation, through empathy and all of that. But Aries is the sign of action. Aries is ruled by Mars. Mars is the warrior planet. He's the commander-in-chief. He wants action right now, right? So Aries is the first sign of the zodiac as well, right? So it's the birth of the being of the zodiac. So what that means is any planet that goes in Aries, they want to do something unique, something new, something that hasn't been done before. You may actually end up starting a new company, depending on which house Aries is in your chart. You may feel very bold. You may do things on your own. You may believe in yourself, because Jupiter and in Aries gives you that kind of power and this strength from within. You have the power to take risks with Jupiter in Aries. It's a very authentic combination, and it's a very forward-looking placement. So you'll be making plans, but also you'll be, because Jupiter always likes to make plans and think big and hope and positive energy, but also sitting in Aries will make you act on those hopes and dreams and plans. The only thing is, of course, Aries is also has this energy where you may end up being overconfident or too arrogant, or you may have knee-jerk reactions, or maybe a lot of anger or impulsive decision making. So those things you have to be careful about. But in general, Jupiter in Aries, extremely powerful period for you to take action connected with the house it is placed in. So we'll talk about that for each of the rising signs. And one other thing to note is that Jupiter enters Aries on April 21st this year, 2023. And that day is very significant because that day is also Akshaya Tritiya. Akshaya Tritiya is the day when both sun and moon are exalted. It's a very powerful day to start any new projects, to take sankalpas, to do donations, to help other people, to be to achieve things and to begin new projects, things like that. So very powerful transition will be happening on April 21st. So this entire transit will bring a lot of positive results. I love making these videos, and please like and share and subscribe to my channel if you haven't done that already. Do watch other videos that I've made, very, very useful, practical information, and please send me your feedback in the comment section. So let's begin one by one, starting with the Aries rising. So we'll see the impact of Jupiter's transit in the sign of Aries for all of the 12 rising signs one by one. Now we'll see the impact of Jupiter's transit in the sign of Aries that'll take place from April 2023 through end of April 2024 for Aries rising people. Aries is the number one sign, the first sign of the zodiac. And so you see number one here. This is the chart for Aries rising. For Aries rising, Jupiter is sitting in the first house during its transit in Aries. So Jupiter is placed in the first house. And Jupiter rules the 9th house and the 12th house. Jupiter is the ruler of Sagittarius, which is number 9 sign. And Jupiter is the ruler of Pisces, which is number 12 sign. So Jupiter is the ruler of 9th house and 12th house for Aries rising. And finally, Jupiter aspects the 5th house, 7th house, and 9th house. So let me show you those. So Jupiter is the ruler of 9th house and 12th house. Jupiter is sitting here in the first house, and Jupiter is aspecting the 5th house, the 7th house, and the 9th house. So sitting in the first house, Jupiter is aspecting the 5th house, the 7th house, and the 9th house. Okay. Let me remove this. So now let's see what all that means. So we're going to analyze all the houses that are impacted by Jupiter. Okay, so these are the 4 houses impacted by Jupiter. The first house, because Jupiter is sitting there, and then 5th house, 7th house, 9th house, Jupiter is aspecting those houses. So let's look at the first house. The first house has, of course, Jupiter is sitting there, and we have Rahu there until November. And also the first house has aspect of Saturn, direct aspect of Saturn, third aspect of Saturn. Okay, so until November, the first house will be aspected by Jupiter, Saturn, and Rahu. After November, Rahu moves over to Pisces. So after November, only Jupiter and Saturn will be aspecting the first house. So we'll talk about what that means. First, we're just checking what planets are aspecting these important houses that we are analyzing. Same thing with the 5th house. Until November, it'll have the aspect of Jupiter and the 5th aspect of Rahu and the 7th aspect of Saturn until November. But after November, when Rahu moves over to Pisces, only Jupiter and Saturn will be aspecting your 5th house. 7th house is a different story. 7th house has a direct aspect of Jupiter, the 7th aspect of Jupiter, but also Ketu is sitting there until November. So until November, you have Jupiter and Ketu affecting the 7th house. After November, only Jupiter's aspect, only Jupiter's drishti will remain on the 7th house. So many, many blessings will unfold after November. Similar situation with the 9th house, except for Ketu, there is Rahu. So 9th house has aspect of Jupiter and Rahu. Both have their 9th aspect on the ninth house until November. But after November, Rahu moves over to the next sign, or the previous sign, I should say, and only Jupiter's aspect remains on the ninth house after November. So that period will be very, very positive. A couple more dates to keep in mind. Saturn will be retrograde June 17th through November 4th. So when a planet is retrograde, you can consider that to be present in the previous sign or the previous house. Okay, so some of the indications will change, some of the results will change, and also around these dates when it's about to go retrograde or forward motion, when it's changing direction, it's stationary for about a period of a week. So for a week around these two dates, it will be stationary. So those are very powerful days for you to start new projects or undertake anything, because the stationary planets are very, very strong and positive. Same thing, Jupiter will be retrograde from September 4th to December 30th, and it will be stationary for about a week around these two dates. Okay, so now let's see what all this means. What's in practical terms, what results can you expect, the Aries rising people? First of all, ninth ruler and 12th ruler sitting in the first house. That means all of the significations of ninth house and 12th house will be displayed in the first house. The first house represents our self, our identity, our reputation, our personality, all of that. So that will have a very spiritual inclination, very spiritual bent to our identity during this time, because both ninth house and 12th house are very spiritual houses. So you'll see a huge influx of spiritual inclination, like very, very deep interest in spirituality. You may actually travel, you may go abroad, you may actually go on a pilgrimage. Because 12th house is the house of pilgrimage. It's sitting in the first house, and you'll uphold the dharma, because ninth house is dharma. So you'll be very cautious about living your dharma, your purpose. And then Jupiter sitting in the first house, in general, anytime Jupiter is in the first house, it's like a huge blessing to the entire chart, because any planet sitting in the first house affects the entire chart. It's like Jupiter sitting in the first house is like a guru sitting on your head during that duration. So it's a period of blessings in general, optimism and expansion and hope and making plans for the future. All of that will unfold with Jupiter sitting in the Lagna for this entire duration. Okay, so that's ninth lord and 12th lord sitting in the first house. And then let's look at the rest of the three houses that Jupiter is aspecting. The fifth house represents our children, romance, our creative energies, our buddhi, which is intellect, and then speculation, stock market, and sports that we play. All of that, and mantras, our students, our disciples, those will have a good positive influence. You'll see positive things unfolding in those areas. Although until November, Rahu is also aspecting the fifth house. So be careful, don't go overboard, don't just jump on making decisions, but you'll see opportunities in these areas. But especially after November, only Jupiter and Saturn will be aspecting fifth house. So then you'll actually see manifestation of those plans and those ideas and those things related to children, romance, creativity, and intelligence, all of that. So much better time after November for those areas of life. Seventh house has Jupiter's aspect and Ketu sitting there. So your relationships, partnerships, and your spouse and your one-on-one connections with your business partners, all of that, you'll see a positive energy. So until November, you have both Ketu and Jupiter affecting the seventh house. That means any partnerships you get into, any relationships you get into, make sure those have some kind of spiritual foundation, spiritual underpinning. It doesn't have to be like you have to sit in the temple. It just means that it should be a deep connection, not just superficial, kind of relationship or partnerships. If that's the case, if those have some kind of solid spiritual foundation, then they will flourish. Excellent time for that. And then after November, Ketu moves away to the previous sign, so only Jupiter will be aspect. So these things will blossom even more after November. Ninth house, your father, your teachers, your teaching, you being a teacher, travel, especially could be work-related travel also, but also for spiritual purposes. And your bhagya, your luck, and your higher studies, all those will have a good positive influence. And especially after November, when Rahu moves away into Pisces, then these things will flourish a lot. So this is overall, you can say the result or what you can expect for Aries rising while Jupiter is transiting the sign of Aries. Make sure to look at your own chart, what planets you have in your natal chart in the sign of Aries, what dasha you're running, and some other factors. All right, so this is overall picture for Aries rising. So now we'll look at the impact of Jupiter's transit in the sign of Aries from April 2023 through end of April 2024, specifically for Taurus rising people. So this is the chart for Taurus rising. Taurus is the number 2 sign of the zodiac, right? So this is number 2 here. These are the sign numbers. And so for Taurus rising, Jupiter will be placed in the 12th house. You see here Jupiter, this is the 12th house of the zodiac. You see 12th house here. And Jupiter rules the 8th house and 11th house. Let me mark those for you. So Jupiter is the ruler of 8th house and 11th house. Why? Because this is a number 9 sign, which is Sagittarius, and this is number 12 sign, which is Pisces. And this is the 8th house, and this is the 11th house. So Jupiter is a ruler of 8th house and 11th house placed in the 12th house. What house is Jupiter is aspecting? Let's take a look at that. So Jupiter sitting in the 12th house is aspecting the 4th house, the 6th house, and the 8th house. Okay, so this is the 5th aspect, 7th aspect, and 9th aspect of Jupiter, which is the 4th house, the 6th house, and the 8th house. Okay, now let's see what other planets are aspecting these houses. So 12th house, where Jupiter is sitting, you also have Rahu until November. After November, Rahu will move over to the sign of Pisces. And also you have the aspect of Saturn on the 12th house, the 3rd aspect of Saturn. So to summarize, you have the aspect of Jupiter, Saturn, and Rahu until November. But after November, you only have the aspect of Jupiter and Saturn. You see, whenever you see aspect of Jupiter and Saturn on the same house, the things related to that house materialize, because Jupiter is hope and planning and future and positive energy, whereas Saturn is execution, on the ground, organization, management, doing things. So Jupiter, Saturn together means you'll not only make plans, but you will actually materialize those plans. So after November, much better period for 12th house related things. 4th house, similar, exactly same thing going on. 4th house, Jupiter, Rahu, and Saturn have aspect until November. After November, Rahu moves over, and then you are left with the aspect of Jupiter and Saturn only on the 4th house after November. 6th house has Ketu sitting in it. So you have the aspect of Jupiter and Ketu until November. And then once Ketu moves over to Virgo, end of November, then you'll only be left with the aspect of Jupiter on the 6th house. So huge blessings for 6th house. 8th house, similar kind of story. You'll have the aspect of Jupiter and Rahu until November. And once Rahu moves over to Pisces, you'll be left with the aspect of Jupiter only after November 2023 for the 8th house for Taurus rising people. Okay, couple other dates to remember. Saturn retrograde, June 17th to November 4th. Jupiter retrograde, September 4th to December 30th. Whenever a planet is retrograde, you can consider that planet to be sitting in the previous sign or the previous house. So instead of sitting in Aquarius, you can say it is sitting in Capricorn because it's backward looking. Similarly, Jupiter, you could say, will have energy in the sign of Pisces during this time period. The other thing, the planets, when they go retrograde or when they go direct from retrograde, they sort of stand still. It's called stationary. So around 1 week of period, around these 2 dates, Saturn will be stationary, and around these 2 dates, Jupiter will be stationary. During those weeks, during that week, it's a great opportunity to do mantras and puja for these planets, and also start projects, initiate things in life, because stationary planet is very, very powerful, very positive. Okay, so now let's look at the the impact, what all this means in practical terms. So we have a 8th house ruler and a 11th house ruler sitting in the 12th house. That means you may actually see some expenses, which could also be in the form of donations or could be plain expenses going out the door. And also could be due to your foreign travel, because Jupiter in the 12th house, expansion of all the things connected with the 12th house, which includes foreign travel, travel to distant places, pilgrimage, all that. So if, that could be one of the things that you initiate on your own, is that, hey, you got to have some kind of expenses or money going out. So why don't I take a trip to a foreign country or a pilgrimage, things like that. So that'll take care of expenses. You may actually be giving donations, and it's a good thing, Jupiter in the 12th house a lot of times, because people say it's not good for, finances, but the thing is, you will give out money only if you have money, right? So that means you'll have enough money, you'll have a lot of money so that you can give donation. And then you may actually be very, very good at or practice or start doing astral travel, sleep meditation, yoga nidra, connection with the ancestors, going on retreats, all of that, because Jupiter is the 8th lord going to the 12th house. Very, very spiritual connection. And you may actually want to let go of some things, like just all your attachments and all these cravings and clingings. This is a good time for letting go of things that are not needed. It will be a very good impact on your subconscious mind, meaning you'll be very, very active when you sleep or when you meditate. All of that will be very, very powerful. And then especially after November, all these things will blossom even more. Very, very positive results for all of these 12th house related things after November, especially. 4th house represents our place of residence. It represents our vehicles, essentially all the things that give us comforts, right? Comfort. And also our mother and our education and real estate is the Sukha Bhava, Sukha Sthana, the place or the house of inner happiness, right? So all of these things will be positively impacted by Jupiter. And especially after November, when Rahu leaves this sign, Rahu no longer has aspect on this house, things will be even more positive. So all of those very good indications for these things in your life during this transit. 6th house has the aspect of Jupiter, and also Ketu is sitting there. So all the things connected with the 6th house, maybe job, if you are looking for a job or changing jobs, I would highly recommend looking at something that has a spiritual foundation, spiritual underpinning, because Jupiter and Ketu is the best combination for doing spiritual work. So you can do spiritual sadhana, spiritual service to other people. Excellent transit for that. And then your health, incorporate a lot of meditation in your health routines as part of your health routines. Go on a lot of walks and hikes and all of that, and try not to take a lot of debt during this period. Anyway, Ketu will not let you do that. Be you'll be very tactful when dealing with the enemies, because Jupiter and Ketu combination will make you very kind of mature, and you'll understand what you're doing. And then also good time for pets and taking any competitive exams. Like if you want to sit for some exams, this is an excellent transit for that. And then once Ketu leaves 6th house over to Virgo in November, only Jupiter will be aspecting. So even better energy, even better results for 6th house significations after November. 8th house has energy of Jupiter and Rahu. That means 8th house represents all the esoteric wisdom, hidden things that we don't see with our naked, like most people don't comprehend or don't see on the surface. So going very deep in spiritual studies, in sadhana, especially with Rahu and Jupiter both aspecting 8th house, because Rahu makes you fearless and Jupiter is the planet of spirituality, dharma, all of that. So excellent time to go deep, hidden, uncover, discover the hidden secrets, all the spiritual wisdom. Excellent time for occult and astrology, looking at things that you haven't done before, or go deep into the studies you've been studying for years, just go deeper. And also good for unearned income. You may get income from other people, in-laws, or inheritance, things like that. And especially after November, even better, even you'll get a huge boost in these areas of life. So that's the overall picture for Taurus rising, how, what things they can expect from April 23 through April 24. But also look at your natal chart, how the sign of Aries is, what other planets are aspecting the sign of Aries, and what how your natal Jupiter is in the chart, and what Mahadasha you're running. So all of those will, then you can see if this transit is really positive or negative. So some of these things you may have to modify. Some of these results may get modified if you have a really, really well-placed Jupiter or well-placed sign of Aries versus there are malefic influence on Aries or on natal Jupiter in your chart. Okay, so this was the analysis for Taurus rising, how your transit is going to be the Jupiter in Aries. So now we'll look at the impact of Jupiter's transit in the sign of Aries from 21st of April 2023 through end of April 2024 for Gemini rising. Gemini is the number 3 sign of the zodiac, and this is the chart for Gemini rising. So you see number 3 here. These are sign numbers. And so for Gemini rising, Jupiter is placed in the 11th house. How is that 11th house? Jupiter is in Aries, which is number 1 sign. And you see here, this is the 11th house. So Jupiter is placed in the 11th house, and Jupiter rules the 7th house and 10th house. Jupiter aspects the 3rd house, 5th house, and 7th house. Let me show you what we're talking about. So first of all, Jupiter is placed in the 11th house here. That's pretty clear. And then Jupiter rules the 7th house and the 10th house. Okay. Why 7th house? This is Sagittarius, number 9 sign. Jupiter is the ruler of Sagittarius, and Pisces, number 12 is Pisces. So Jupiter rules the 7th house and 10th house. It's placed in the 11th house. And then Jupiter aspects which houses? Let's draw that. So sitting in the 11th house, Jupiter is aspecting the 3rd house, the 5th house, and the 7th house. Okay, so this is the 5th aspect of Jupiter, 7th aspect of Jupiter, 9th aspect of Jupiter on the 7th house. So overall, that's the picture, and this is what all this means. And then let's look at the houses. So we'll analyze all the houses that are being impacted by Jupiter, which is 11th house, 3rd house, 5th house, and 7th house one by one. 11th house has the aspect of Jupiter. Of course, Jupiter is sitting there and Rahu is sitting there until November. And then you also have aspect of Saturn on the 11th house, the 3rd aspect of Saturn. So essentially, Jupiter, Saturn, and Rahu are aspecting for 11th house until November. After November, Rahu moves over to the previous sign of Pisces, and then you'll be left with the aspect of Jupiter and Saturn on the 11th house after November. 3rd house, exactly same situation. 3rd house, this is the 3rd house. This has the aspect of Jupiter and Rahu and Saturn, all 3 until November. And after Rahu moves over, you'll be left with the aspect of the 5th aspect of Jupiter and the 7th aspect of Saturn. So you'll have Jupiter and Saturn aspect after November. 5th house is a different story. 5th house has Ketu sitting in it, and Jupiter is aspecting it. So you have the Jupiter-Ketu aspect until November. After November, Ketu moves over to the previous sign of Virgo, and you'll be left with just pure aspect of Jupiter after November. Excellent time for the 5th house significations after November. Similar thing with the 7th house. You have the aspect of Jupiter and Rahu on the 7th house until November 2023. After November, Jupiter will be the only planet aspecting the 7th house. So excellent time. So this is how you look at the aspects on each house. And then a couple of other important dates. Saturn will be retrograde from June 17th to November 4th, and Jupiter will be retrograde from September 4th to December 30th. And during a retrograde motion, what you can do is you can think of that planet being placed in the previous sign, because it's backward looking. It literally wants to go back to the previous sign. So you can analyze the chart as if that planet is sitting in the previous sign. We won't get into that, but that's just for your information, how you can modify the results of what we're talking about today during these retrograde periods. And these are the around for a week or so, when a planet is about to go retrograde or about to go direct, it becomes stationary. So about a week around June 17th and a week around November 4th, similarly, these dates, those days are very powerful. The stationary planet is extremely powerful, very beneficial, very gives very positive results. So a week around these dates is very powerful for doing mantras for these planets and initiate new projects and get the blessings of Saturn and Jupiter. So now let's see what the results are going to be in practical terms. You have your 7th house and the 10th house ruler sitting in the 11th house. So very simple, interpretation of that would be you'll have gains in your career. So 10th house is your career, 11th is the gains. 10th Lord sitting in the 11th house means gains in your career, promotion or financial gains especially. And also, it's a good time for friendships, for making new friends, reaching out to people at large, developing partnerships, and also fulfillment of your desires and ambitions. You'll see a lot of your desires and ambitions, they will be fulfilled during this transit. And you'll want to help the humanity. So you'll be very interested in reaching out to the masses, reaching out to the people to help them. Without any own motive behind it, just pure humanity. Okay, so that's, and also you may actually see gains through your spouse because 7th Lord is sitting in the 11th house. So gains from your spouse or just financial gains for your spouse. Next, we'll look at the 3rd house. 3rd house has aspect of, so one more thing. So these significations that we talked about, they'll actually have much better results after November, until November, because Rahu aspect is also there. So be a little bit careful about these things. Don't do anything in haste. 3rd house, again, has aspect of Jupiter, Saturn, Rahu until November. So you'll do a lot of short distance travels. You'll have a lot of courage. And you learn new skills, you'll have a lot of communication to do, process a lot of information, and then good time period for your connection with your younger siblings. So all those things will blossom, and especially more so after November when Rahu moves over to Pisces. Now looking at the 5th house, 5th house represents our children, romance, creativity, all the speculation, stock market, our intelligence, our buddhi, and the sports that we play, our students, our disciples, the mantra shastra, all of that is 5th house. So you'll see that. So you have Jupiter and Ketu affecting the 5th house. That means extremely powerful spiritual energies in there. So you should focus on, so what that means, you could actually develop some spiritual connection with your children. You and your child or children could do meditation together, or you could find somebody as a partner for love and romance who is very spiritual, right? So that's how you want to interpret is Jupiter and Ketu are 2 most spiritual planets, and they're sitting in the 5th house, and they will give a huge dose of spiritual inclination around those areas of life. But after November, when Ketu moves over to the previous sign of Virgo, then it's purely Jupiter aspect in the 5th house. So expansion of all of these areas. Maybe you'll have a child, you're planning for a child, and this is a good time for having a child or planning for a child. You may find somebody, a lover, and this is an excellent time for creativity. Expand your creative energies during this time period. Finally, the 7th house has aspect of Jupiter and Rahu until November. So there will be expansion of your relationships. And because Rahu is Vata, Rahu is expansion, but Jupiter is also, Jupiter is the, ether element. It holds everything, and it represents the expansion of the universe. So everything Jupiter touches, it expands. So your relationships, your partnerships, your one-on-one connections with other people will expand. And after November, it'll be pure Jupiter energy on the 7th house of relationships. So huge blessings of the Guru for your one-on-one relationships. So this is the overall picture, overall analysis for Gemini rising, how the transit of Jupiter in the sign of Aries is going to be. Of course, you have to look at your own chart, how the 11th house, what planets are placed in 11th house, and then what dasha, mahadasha you're running So anyway, this is overall picture. Now we'll see the impact of Jupiter's transit in the sign of Aries for Cancer rising people. So Cancer is the number 4 sign of the zodiac, and this is the chart for Cancer rising. You see number 4 here, that's the number 4 sign of Cancer. And for Cancer rising, Jupiter will be placed in the 10th house. You see Jupiter is placed here. This is the 10th house, and it's placed in the sign of Aries, number 1. Jupiter is placed in the 10th house, and Jupiter rules the 6th house and the 9th house, 6th house and the 9th house. And Jupiter aspects the 2nd, 4th, and 6th, the 2nd house, the 4th house, and the 6th house. So let me show you that on the chart. So Jupiter is placed in the 10th house, and it rules the 6th house and the 9th house. This is Sagittarius, and this is Pisces. So Jupiter rules the 6th house, this is 6th house, and the 9th house, this is the 9th house. Jupiter aspects the 2nd house, 4th house, and 6th house. Let's see how that looks like. So Jupiter aspects the 2nd house, which is the 5th aspect of Jupiter. Jupiter aspects the 4th house, which is the 7th aspect of Jupiter. And Jupiter aspects the 6th house, which is the 9th aspect of Jupiter. So now we're going to look at the impact of Jupiter on all of these houses for Cancer rising. First of all, 10th house, where Jupiter is placed, you have the Jupiter sitting there, of course, and then Rahu is also sitting there until November. And there is aspect of Saturn, the 3rd aspect of Saturn on the 10th house until, so that'll be there throughout the duration. So until November, you have aspect of Jupiter, Saturn, and Rahu. And once Rahu moves over to the sign of Pisces, you'll have the aspect of Jupiter and Saturn on the 10th house. Let's look at the 2nd house. So 2nd house, exact same situation. Jupiter and Rahu are aspect, and also Saturn are all three are aspecting the 2nd house until November. And once Rahu moves over to Pisces, then only Jupiter and Saturn will be aspecting after November. 4th house, Jupiter is aspecting the 4th house throughout this transit, but Ketu will be sitting there until November. So you have Jupiter and Ketu aspecting until November, and after that, purely the Jupiter's aspect after November on the 4th house for Cancer rising. Finally, the 6th house has the aspect of Jupiter and Rahu. This is the 9th aspect of Jupiter and 9th aspect of Rahu on the 6th house until November. Once Rahu moves over to Pisces, you'll see only the aspect of Jupiter on the 6th house. So we'll see what all of that means. And also a couple of other important dates. Saturn will be stationary from June 17 to November 4th. And Jupiter will be stationary from September 4th to December 30th. Now, when a planet is retrograde, so Saturn retrograde during this period and Jupiter retrograde during this period, you can assume that that planet, the retrograde planet, is sitting in the previous sign. So Saturn, when it gets retrograde in Aquarius, you can simply assume that it'll have the energy in both Aquarius as well as Capricorn, the previous sign. Similarly, for Jupiter, when it's retrograde, you can assume it to be present in both Aries and Pisces. The planets become stationary when they're about to go retrograde or they're about to go direct. So about a week around these dates, they will be stationary, and very, very powerful period, that 1 week, because planets are very strong, give very positive results during their stationary phase. So around a week's time around these dates, very, very powerful. You can initiate new projects and do more mantras and sadhana and chanting for these and donation for these planets. So now let's look at these houses one by one, all the 4 houses that will be impacted by Jupiter. First of all, 6th Lord and 9th Lord placed in the 10th house. So the career will be focused. You'll have expansion in your career and your job and name and fame, connection with the authorities, with the government, and you'll do a lot of service. Essentially, you'll bring that energy of service, doing service to the humanity, over to your 10th house in career. So maybe in your job, in your work, you'll actually do a lot of service as well. And then your father may get involved in your career. He may help you with your job, with your career. You may do work together, business with or family business, right? So this is a perfect time for starting getting involved or getting more involved in your family business. And also excellent period for the blessings of the gurus and the teachers in your workplace. So a very, very positive, uplifting period for your career, for your job, for your profession, especially after November, once Rahu moves away from there. Even with Rahu there, Rahu in the 10th house does give you this urge for expansion, for name and fame, for more recognition, for working hard. So all of that will be positively impacted during this transit. Next is the second house. Second house represents our family, our speech, the words that we speak, the food that we eat, our diet, our wealth, our family wealth, our accumulated wealth. All of that will have positive influence from Jupiter, and also Rahu will be aspecting those. So there'll be expansion of those areas, and Saturn aspecting there as well. But especially after November, when you have only the Jupiter and Saturn aspecting the second house, these things will see even better results for these things in your life. Fourth house has aspect of Jupiter, and Ketu is sitting there. So all the things connected with the fourth house, your mother, your house, physical place of residence, your vehicles, the things that give you comfort, and your mother, your education and your real estate, all of that will have a very spiritual inclination. So let's say, you know, for your mother, you may actually start doing some spiritual things with your mother, or your mother herself may start some spiritual routine, things like that, especially until November. It'll be a very, very, it's more like going within, not like external, you know, display of spirituality. But Jupiter and Ketu together means doing meditation, doing sadhana, doing fasting, things like that will be the focus. And especially after November, then only Jupiter will be aspecting. So expansion, you may actually buy a new house, a bigger house, or new vehicles, or you may start new courses, new subjects, or new education. So all of that positively impacted in the fourth house. Sixth house has aspect of Jupiter and Rahu until November. So you may actually see expansion in your desire to do the more health routines, and you'll be very strong with your enemies, both internal and external enemies. The Shadripus, the 6 weaknesses will have. So this is a good time to fight all the internal and external enemies. You'll be excelling at your job, at your service. And not a good time to take on any new debts or loans, because those may expand if you do. And then also excellent time for taking competitive exams. So this is general overall picture for Cancer rising. Now you have to look at your chart, what other planets are placed in your natal chart in the sign of Aries, how Jupiter is placed natally in your chart, and what dashas you're running. But overall, a good period for these houses for Cancer rising. Now let's see the impact of Jupiter's transit in the sign of Aries from April 2023 through April 2024, especially for Leo rising. So Leo is number 5 sign of the zodiac, and this is the chart for Leo rising. You see number 5 here. Number 5 sign is Leo. So for Leo rising, when Jupiter transits through the sign of Aries, it'll be sitting in the 9th house. So Jupiter is placed in the 9th house. You see here, this is the 9th house. And Jupiter is the ruler of the 5th house and the 8th house for Leo rising. So let me mark that on the chart. So Jupiter is the ruler of the 5th house and the 8th house, because 5th house is Sagittarius and 8th house is Pisces. So Jupiter will be the ruler of these 2 houses. And finally, Jupiter aspects the 1st house, 3rd house, and 5th house. Let's draw those. So Jupiter, sitting in the 9th house, Jupiter is aspecting the 1st house, Jupiter is aspecting the 3rd house, and Jupiter is aspecting the 5th house. Okay. So we'll see what all that means. And a couple of other important dates to keep in mind. Saturn will be stationary from June 17 to November 4th, and Jupiter will be, I'm sorry, not stationary, Saturn will be retrograde from June 19th to November 4th, and Jupiter will be retrograde from September 4th to December 30th. They will be stationary for a few days around these dates, so those are powerful days to start new projects, do a lot of mantras, chanting for these planets to get the blessings. But whenever the planet is retrograde, you can assume that the planet is sitting in the previous sign. So let's say Saturn goes retrograde in Aquarius, you can feel the energy of Saturn in both Aquarius and Capricorn. So you can analyze the chart based on that. So just modify these interpretations during those periods. So the impact will be there in the previous sign as well. So first of all, let's look at the ninth house. So you have the fifth lord and the eighth lord placed in the ninth house. Ninth house represents our bhagya, our luck. So expansion of your luck, expansion of your dharma, good period for your father, excellent time for spiritual travels to the far off lands. Very deep esoteric wisdom, because Jupiter sitting in the ninth house it's the eighth lord, bringing in all the esoteric hidden secrets and wisdom, and also creativity. So you may actually do creative projects with your father. You may be very creative in your dharma, the way you do, or even your higher studies. So all of that, very excellent time for ninth house significations. Next is the first house. First house represents our self, our health, our constitution, our identity, our personality, our reputation, name and fame in general. So all of those will get a boost during this transit, and especially after November, when Rahu leaves Aries and go into Pisces. At that time, Jupiter and Saturn will be aspecting the first house. So excellent time in general. It'll lift up your entire chart. Third house has the aspect of Jupiter and also Ketu sitting there. So you may develop very spiritual connection with your siblings. You may pick up some spiritual skills, and your desires may be fulfilled. You may travel a lot, actually, short distance travels. Could be connected with a spiritual motivation or to do spiritual work. You'll process a lot of information. You'll do a lot of communication. You'll be very courageous. So all of those things will be positively impacted. And especially after November, when Ketu moves over to the sign of Virgo, then you'll have pure aspect of Jupiter, and all these things will blossom. You'll develop skills and travel and communication, connection with your siblings. All of that will be very positive. Finally, the fifth house. Fifth house represents our children, our creativity, our intelligence, the speculation, stock market, taking risks, love and romance, and sports that we play. All of that will have good positive influence, with both Jupiter and Rahu aspecting the fifth house until November. And after November, when Rahu moves over to Pisces, then pure Jupiter aspect on the fifth house. Excellent period for your children, for your creativity, for finding your love, for intelligence, doing sports activities and all of that. So that's the overall picture for Jupiter's transit in the sign of Aries for Leo rising. Of course, you have to look at your natal chart, how the sign of Aries is in your chart, what planets are placed in your natal chart, how Jupiter is in your natal chart, what dasha, mahadasha, antardasha you're running. So all those will modify the results. But overall, good, positive time period for these areas of life. Now we'll look at the impact of Jupiter's transit in the sign of Aries for Virgo rising people. Virgo is the number 6 sign of the zodiac, and this is the chart for Virgo rising, number 6 sign here on the ascendant. So for Virgo rising, Jupiter is sitting in the 8th house. It's placed in the 8th house. So Jupiter is here in Aries, number 1 sign, and that's the 8th house. And Jupiter rules the 4th house and the 7th house. So let me show you that. Jupiter rules the 4th house and the 7th house. This is Sagittarius and this is Pisces. So Jupiter is ruler of 4th house and 7th house, sitting in the 8th house, and Jupiter aspects the 12th house. So from the 8th house, it aspects your 12th house, it aspects your 2nd house, and it aspects your 4th house. Okay, so that's the picture. And now we'll analyze all the houses that are being impacted by Jupiter, what the results are going to be. First of all, the 8th house where Jupiter is placed. 8th house has Jupiter in it and also Rahu is sitting in it. And you also have the aspect of Saturn on the 8th house, so and until November. After November, Rahu moves over to the previous sign of Pisces, so it will be left with just the aspect of Jupiter and Saturn after November on the 8th house. Now, the 12th house, exactly same situation. You have the aspect of Jupiter, Saturn, and Rahu until November. And once Rahu changes signs, you'll have the aspect of Jupiter and Saturn. For the 2nd house, you have direct aspect of Jupiter and also Ketu is sitting there until November. Once Ketu moves over to Virgo, then you'll be left with just the aspect of Jupiter on the 2nd house after November 2023. Finally, the 4th house, you have the aspect of Jupiter and Rahu on the 4th house until November. Once Rahu moves over to Pisces, then there'll be just pure aspect of Jupiter on the 4th house after November 2023. So we'll see what all this means. A couple of other dates to remember. Saturn will be retrograde from June 17th to November 4th, and Jupiter will be retrograde from September 4th to December 30th. So when a planet is retrograde, you can say that it kind of, you can move it to the previous sign. So it'll have energy in both the sign it's placed and also the previous sign. So let's say Jupiter goes retrograde in Aquarius, you can assume it to be there in Capricorn and Aquarius both. That's how you analyze. So, and also a few days around these dates, the planet goes stationary. And that's a very powerful time to do mantras, japa, donation, start new projects around these dates mentioned here. And that's when these planets are extremely powerful and they are very benevolent. So now let's look at the results for each of these houses. So first of all, 4th Lord and the 7th Lord placed in the 8th house. So you may see a spiritual transformation of mother, because that's the 4th ruler, or your spouse, right? And then, or you may actually feel happy. There may be like transformation in the way you feel happy, your inner happiness. You'll feel you may actually go deep into the realms of esoteric wisdom, because Jupiter and Rahu both are there. Rahu is fearless and Jupiter is all about spirituality. So you'll dive deep into the esoteric wisdom, the pearls of wisdom, and that may give you inner happiness, being the 4th ruler. You may actually also get lots of unearned income, like inheritance or money from in-laws, things like that. So that's the impact of Jupiter in the 8th house. And then the 12th house, where Jupiter and Saturn and Rahu are aspecting, a very, very good period for going deep into spirituality again, because 12th house represents astral travel, the other planes of existence, your sleep, your ancestors. So all of those things being impacted, being aspected by Jupiter sitting in the 8th house, which is a very spiritual planet. And so it'll give expansion to all of those things. So you may give more donations, you may undertake a foreign trip, pilgrimage, do yoga nidra, letting go of things that are not needed. So all of that, very positive period. 2nd house, you have Ketu sitting there. So you may actually develop very spiritual connection with your family and with the money itself, with the wealth. Right, so you may actually start, focusing on the spiritual aspects of money, how you can help other people, not just amassing wealth. And then also, it's an excellent time period for you to talk about spiritual things, because Jupiter and Ketu both are extremely spiritual planets, and they are both affecting your 2nd house of speech. So you may actually talk about spiritual subjects. You may actually become a teacher and give lectures on spiritual subjects. Finally, the 4th house has the aspect of Jupiter and Rahu until November. So you may actually expand your home. You may actually buy a new home. You may even buy real estate, right? So that's expansion of all the 4th house matters. That's real estate. You may buy a new vehicle, a new car, and things like that. And especially after November, when Rahu moves over to the previous sign, you'll be left with just the pure aspect of Jupiter on the 4th house. So all of these things will blossom, really blossom after November. before November also, but especially after November. So that's the high level picture. What things may how the transit of Jupiter over Aries will look like for Virgo. You have to look at your own chart, what planets are placed in the sign of Aries. In your natal chart, how Jupiter is placed in your natal chart, what Dasha, Mahadasha you're running. So those things will impact, they'll modify the results, but these are the overall general results of Jupiter's transit in Aries for Virgo rising. So now we'll see the impact of Jupiter's transit in the sign of Aries during this period for the sign of Libra, Libra rising. Libra is number 7 sign of the zodiac. So you see here, this is a chart for Libra rising. Number 7 here. So for Libra rising, Jupiter is sitting in the 7th house. So you see here, Jupiter is placed in the 7th house. That's the sign of Aries. This is the 7th house. And Jupiter rules the 3rd house and the 6th house. So let me show you that. So Jupiter rules the 3rd house and the 6th house, because 3rd house is Sagittarius and 6th house is Pisces. So Jupiter is the ruler of 3rd house and 6th house placed in the 7th house. And then Jupiter aspects the 11th house, 1st house, and the 3rd house. So let's see that. So Jupiter is aspecting the 11th house, which is the 5th aspect, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Jupiter aspects the 1st house, which is the 7th aspect, direct 7th aspect. And Jupiter aspects the 3rd house. Okay, so that's the 9th aspect of Jupiter. So we'll analyze all the houses that are being impacted by Jupiter. First of all, 7th house. 7th house where Jupiter is placed has Jupiter in it, of course, and then there's Rahu placed there until November. And then you also have the aspect of Saturn on the 7th house. So you have aspect of Jupiter, Saturn, and Rahu until November. And then after November, only Jupiter and Saturn will be influencing the 7th house. And exactly same is the situation with the 11th house. You have Jupiter and Rahu having their 5th aspect, and Saturn having the 7th aspect on the 11th house until November. And when Rahu moves over to the sign of Pisces, then you'll be left with the aspect of Jupiter and Saturn on the 11th house. The 1st house has direct 7th aspect of Jupiter, and Ketu is sitting there until November. After November, only Jupiter will be aspecting the 1st house, because Ketu will move over to the previous sign of Virgo. Finally, the 3rd house has aspect of Jupiter and Rahu, the 9th aspect of Jupiter and Rahu on the 3rd house until November. And after November, when Rahu moves over to Pisces, then only Jupiter will be aspecting the 3rd house. So we'll look at what that means in a second. A couple of other important dates. Saturn will be retrograde from June 17th to November 4th. Jupiter will be retrograde from September 4th to, June 17th to November 4th, and Jupiter retrograde from September 4th to December 30th. So when a planet goes retrograde, you can assume it to be present in the previous sign. So you can shift it to the previous sign. So when Saturn retrograde in Aquarius, you can feel the energy of Saturn in both Aquarius and Capricorn. That's how you can analyze the chart. So now let's look at all these 4 houses one by one. First is the 3rd lord and the 6th lord placed in the 7th house. What does that mean? Lots of focus and expansion on your relationships and one-on-one partnerships with both personal as well as business partnerships. So huge expansion in this area, especially with Jupiter and Rahu. Both are expansive planets. Jupiter is ether. It expands everything. And Rahu is actually like a storm. It's like a blower. It expands everything it touches. So you may see expansion in relation. One thing is, until November, be very careful in what kind of relationships you get into, because Rahu may give you illusions. So don't jump on making conclusions or, on developing these partnerships very quickly. Think through those. After November, though, there will be only the aspect of Jupiter and Saturn on the 7th house. So then you'll actually you'll develop very solid, long-lasting partnerships after November. Before November, it's like you may be searching, you may be developing lots of these connections, but then they'll solidify after November. The 11th house, you'll see expansion, increase in your financial gains. You'll develop more friends and increase in your social circle. Your ambitions and desires will be fulfilled. So all of that will be positively impacted, and especially it's a great time to get into like social media, do things on the internet, reaching out to the masses, things like that, with Rahu aspect in your 11th house until November. After November, Jupiter and Saturn will be aspecting the 11th house. So good period to solidify, to have concrete results for the 11th house significations. The first house has direct aspect of Jupiter, and Ketu is sitting there. So this will actually, so first house represents our Lagna. This is our self, our personality, our identity, our reputation, our name and fame, our health. So you will actually become very spiritually inclined. You may do more meditation. In general, your outlook will be very spiritual. You want to go within because Ketu is sitting in your Lagna until November. After November, pure aspect of Jupiter, blessings of the Guru, expansion of yourself, of your health routines, all of that will be positively impacted. The third house, finally, the third house, Jupiter aspects the third house, and Rahu is aspecting until November. So you may travel a lot, short distance travels. You may develop good connections, spiritual connection with your siblings. You may develop new skills, communication, lots of processing of information. You'll be very courageous. You'll be able to fight the small, everyday issues with courage. So especially after November, when only Jupiter is aspecting, then even better. These things will blossom even more after November. So that's the overall analysis for Jupiter's transit in Aries for Libra rising. That's the number 7 sign. You have to look at your own chart, how the sign of Aries is placed, what planets are placed in Aries, and how Jupiter is placed in your chart, in your natal chart. That also impacts the analysis. And also what dasha you're running. All of those will modify the results, but overall, a good period of expansion and blessings in these areas of life for these significations of these houses for Libra rising. Now we'll see the impact of Jupiter's transit in the sign of Aries from April 2023 through April 2024, specifically for Scorpio rising. Scorpio is the number 8 sign of the zodiac. So you see here, this is the chart for Scorpio rising, number 8 sign rising, Scorpio rising. So for Scorpio, when Jupiter goes in the sign of Aries, it will be placed in the 6th house. So this is Jupiter in Aries placed in the 6th. This is the 6th house. And Jupiter rules the 2nd house and the 5th house. So let me show you that. Jupiter rules the 2nd house and the 5th house. 2nd house is Sagittarius and 5th house is Pisces. So Jupiter is the ruler of these two houses placed in the 6th house. And Jupiter aspects the 10th house, 12th house, and 2nd house. Let's do that. So Jupiter sitting in the 6th house, first of all, it aspects the 10th house. And then it aspects the 12th house. And also it is aspecting the 2nd house. Okay. So we will analyze all of the houses that are impacted by Jupiter, which is 6th house is placed in the 6th house and it's aspecting the 10th house, 12th house, and 2nd house. So 6th house has Jupiter in it, and also Rahu is sitting there until November, and also Saturn is aspecting the 6th house. So you have the aspect of Jupiter and Saturn and Rahu until November. And then after November, when Rahu moves over to Pisces, you'll be left with the aspect of Jupiter and Saturn on the 6th house. We'll see what that means in a second. And then 10th house, exactly same situation. Jupiter, Saturn, and Rahu are aspecting until November. And then after November, only Jupiter and Saturn will be aspecting your 10th house. The 12th house has Ketu sitting in it until November, and Jupiter is aspecting throughout the year from April 23 through April 24. So until November, you have Ketu and Jupiter energy in the 12th house. After November, only Jupiter is aspecting. Finally, the 2nd house is being aspected by Jupiter and Rahu both until November. And once Rahu moves over to Pisces, only Jupiter will be aspecting the 2nd house. And a couple of other dates to remember: Saturn will be retrograde from June 17 to November 4th, and Jupiter will be retrograde September 4th through December 30th. So when they are retrograde, you can assume that they are placed in the previous sign. So Saturn, you can take it to Capricorn, and Jupiter, you can assume it's placed in Pisces. That's one way of analyzing the impact of retrograde planets. So those periods, you have to modify the impact of Jupiter's transit in Aries, whatever we're talking in this video. So let's see all of those, how those houses are impacted. So we're saying the second lord and the fifth lord is placed in the sixth house. Sixth house is connected with our debts, the loans that we take, our health routines, diseases in general, Shad Ripus, our 6 weaknesses, our enemies, and the service that we do for other people, our competitive exams that we take, and our pets, especially small pets. So all of those things will be positively impacted with Jupiter being there. But after November, it'll be even better once Rahu moves out of there. Until then, actually, Rahu in the sixth house gives you huge fighting capability. So you'll be very, very competitive, victorious. You'll be strong. Then let's look at the next house, is the 10th house, that has aspect of Jupiter, Saturn, and Rahu until November. So you'll have huge boost in your career, in your profession, in your connection with the authorities, in the service that you do for others, because sixth house is service. You may actually do volunteer work at your workplace, in your business, in your profession. All of those are highlighted. The 12th house has the aspect of Jupiter and Ketu sitting there. So a very, very deep spiritual experience is awaiting you. You may do astral travel, travel to the other planes of existence, yoga nidra, lucid dreaming, letting go of things and giving donations, doing service for other people, taking a trip to a foreign country, a pilgrimage, and also good for sleep. So all of those areas will be very positively impacted in a very spiritual way. Finally, the second house has the aspect of Jupiter and Rahu until November. So your family, your wealth, your speech, your food that you eat, all of those will have a good positive boost. And especially after November, Jupiter will give expansion in those areas of life. So that's the overall impact of Jupiter's transit in Aries for Scorpio rising. So now we'll see the impact of Jupiter's transit in the sign of Aries for Sagittarius rising. So Sagittarius is the number 9 sign of the zodiac. You see here, this is the chart for Sagittarius rising. This is number 9 here, which is Sagittarius. So for Sagittarius rising, Jupiter is placed in the 5th house. So here Jupiter is placed. This is the 5th house, as you can see here. It's placed in the sign of Aries, number 1 sign. And Jupiter rules the 5th house and the 4th house. So let me show you that. I'm sorry, the 1st house and the 4th house. So Jupiter rules the 1st house and rules the 4th house. This is Sagittarius and this is Pisces. So essentially for Sagittarius rising, the Lagna Lord, the ruler of the chart, is placed in the 5th house. So very, very powerful, period for everything that Jupiter touches in this chart. So we'll look at those. And then Jupiter is aspecting the 9th house, the 11th house, and the 1st house. So let me show you that. So sitting in the 5th house, first of all, Jupiter is aspecting the 9th house. And Jupiter is aspecting the 11th house. And Jupiter is aspecting the 1st house, the 9th aspect. Okay. So to summarize, Jupiter is placed in the 5th house. It's the ruler of the 1st house and the 4th house, and it's aspecting the 9th house, the 11th house, and the 1st house. So we'll analyze all of these houses being touched by Jupiter. 5th house has Jupiter sitting in it, of course, but also Rahu is there until November, and Saturn is aspecting the 5th house with its 3rd aspect. So you have Jupiter and Saturn and Rahu aspecting the 5th house until November. And then after November, Rahu moves over to the previous sign of Pisces. So only Jupiter and Saturn will be aspecting the 5th house after November. And exactly same situation for the 9th house. You have Jupiter, Saturn, and Rahu until November aspecting the 9th house. And after that, only Jupiter and Saturn will be aspecting. The next is the 11th house. You have Ketu sitting there, and Jupiter has having the 7th aspect on the 11th house. So you have Jupiter and Ketu aspecting until November. After November, Ketu moves over to the previous sign of Virgo. So Jupiter will be the only planet aspecting the 11th house after November. Finally, the first house, both Jupiter and Rahu are casting their 9th aspect on the Lagna, on the first house, until November. After November, Rahu moves over to the previous sign of Pisces, and only Jupiter will be aspecting the first house. So this is kind of like blessings of the Guru. Whenever Jupiter aspects the first house, the Lagna, it is like Guru is sitting on our head, giving us blessings all the time. So very, very good, positive time overall for Sagittarius rising. A couple of other dates to keep in mind. Saturn will go retrograde from June 17th through November 4th. And Jupiter will be retrograde from September 4th through December 30th. So during these periods, these results may be slightly modified because you take the planet to be in the previous sign when it's retrograde. It has the energy of both the signs, the sign it's placed in and the previous sign. Okay, so let's see. First of all, we'll analyze the 5th house. So the first lord and the 4th lord is placed in the 5th house. So first lord is the Lagna lord. That's yourself. So you will be very, very involved with your children. You'll do a lot of creative work, and you will be also doing all of these things along with your mother, possibly, because Jupiter is the 4th lord. So your mother, your children, yourself, all of that is getting a connection, a very spiritual connection. And so also your intelligence, your education, your sports, all of those will get a positive boost. And especially after November, when Rahu moves out of this 5th house, then it'll be very, very strong, even more positive period for these 5th house significations. 9th house has, again, aspect of these 3 planets until November. So your higher studies, your gurus, your teachers, your father, and the dharmic activities that you do, your luck, your bhagya, you'll travel for spiritual purposes, even for your work. So all of those things will have a positive impact in the 9th house while Jupiter is transiting in Aries. Next, 11th house will have Jupiter's aspect and Ketu is sitting there. So you may actually make spiritual friends. You may have financial gains, but through spiritual means. Your desires and ambitions may be fulfilled. You'll also do some spiritual things with your older siblings, especially. That's the 11th house. And after November, when Ketu moves over to the previous sign of Virgo, then pure energy of Jupiter on the 11th house. So expansion of your friends, social circle, going on a, inviting people home and spending time with friends, all of that will be very, very positive. Finally, the first house. So Jupiter is aspect in the first house. So that means yourself, your dignity, your identity, your reputation, your constitution, your personality will get a boost, and your health will get a boost. So very positive period for all of those areas. So this is just a general overall analysis for Jupiter's transit in Aries for the sign of for Sagittarius rising. Now we'll see the impact of Jupiter's transit in the sign of Aries for this duration, for this 1 year period, for Capricorn rising. So Capricorn is a number 10 sign of the zodiac. And this is the chart for Capricorn rising. You have number 10 sign here. So for Capricorn rising, Jupiter is placed in the 4th house when it's transiting the sign of Aries. Jupiter in the 4th house. And Jupiter is the ruler of 12th house and the 3rd house. So let me mark that on the chart. So Jupiter is the ruler of the 12th house and the 3rd house. 12th house is Sagittarius and 3rd house is Pisces. So Jupiter is the ruler of 12th house and 3rd house placed in the 4th house. We'll see how to interpret that. And Jupiter is aspecting the 8th house, the 10th house, and the 12th house. So this is the 5th aspect of Jupiter, this is the 7th aspect, and this is the 9th aspect of Jupiter. Okay. So we will see the impact of Jupiter on all of these houses one by one. First, the fourth house. Fourth house has Jupiter sitting in it, and there is Rahu sitting in it until November. And also Saturn is aspecting the fourth house. So we have Jupiter, Saturn, and Rahu aspecting the fourth house until November. And then after November, Rahu moves over to the previous sign of Pisces, and we'll see the impact of Jupiter and Saturn only. We'll see how to analyze that. The next is the eighth house. Eighth house, exact same situation. Jupiter, Saturn, and Rahu are aspecting the eighth house until November. Once Rahu moves over, we're left with the aspect of Jupiter and Saturn. 10th house has Ketu sitting in it, and Jupiter has the seventh aspect. So you have the energy of Jupiter and Ketu until November. Once Ketu moves over to previous sign of Virgo in November, at the end of November, then we'll just have a pure aspect of Jupiter on the 10th house. Finally, the 12th house has aspect of Jupiter and Rahu, the 9th house aspect of both on the 12th house. And after November, when Rahu moves over to the previous sign, so there'll be just the pure aspect of Jupiter on the 12th house. A couple of other dates. Saturn will be retrograde from June 17 through November 4th. And Jupiter will be retrograde from September 4th through December 30th. So when a planet is retrograde, you can assume that it is placed in the previous sign. So you can say when Saturn goes retrograde in Aquarius, you can assume it to be placed in Capricorn and analyze the chart that way. So during this period, you have to modify the analysis, the results. But overall, this will be the picture. So let's look at all the houses one by one. First is the 12th Lord and the third Lord are placed in the fourth house. So that means Jupiter in Aries in the fourth house, in general, expansion for your mother, for the vehicles that you drive, for your residence place where you live, for real estate, buying more properties, Sukhasthana, in improvement in your happiness, inner happiness. You may start up some, more courses, some get more education. All of those things will have a positive impact, and especially they'll actually have a spiritual inclination to that, spiritual energy to all of that. So for example, your mother may become more spiritual, or if the house that you buy may be very Vastu compliant, it may have more spiritual energies, things like that. But until November, Rahu is also sitting there, so you have to be very careful because there may be some illusion, some things that you may overlook, or you may actually take a decision in haste, because Jupiter in Aries is a very fast moving sign, right? So the energy is that to act. And especially Rahu there will almost force you to act before you think. So be very careful until November. Still positive period, but be careful. But after November, very, very solid results in those areas of life. Eighth house, similar situation. So eighth house represents hidden esoteric wisdom. It's the house of change and transformation. It's the house of our unknown fears, house for research, digging deep into the root of the matter, and also sudden changes, and also income from other people that you didn't earn, unearned income like inheritance or money from in-laws or from other people. So all of those things will get a positive boost. And especially after November, when Rahu is not aspecting the eighth house, then these things will give you very concrete positive results. Next is the 10th house of career. Jupiter is aspecting, Ketu sitting there. So you'll actually see that you want to do something that has a purpose. Like instead of just doing a job, you want to do something that's meaningful to you, has a spiritual underpinning, that has a spiritual foundation. But in general, it'll give you expansion in your career, in your job. And especially after November, once Ketu moves away to the previous sign of Virgo, then Jupiter will give you expansion in your profession, in your career. Finally, the 12th house, you may actually undergo a spiritual journey, go to a foreign country, undertake astral travel, do yoga nidra. All of those things will blossom. You may give more donations, may make a trip to the foreign country, and you may actually go on a retreat. And especially after November, very, very, very positive results in these areas in your life. So that's the overall general analysis of Jupiter's transit in the sign of Aries for Capricorn rising. Now we'll see the impact of Jupiter's transit in the sign of Aries from April 2023 through April 2024 for Aquarius rising. So Aquarius is the number 11 sign of the zodiac. And you see this is the chart for Aquarius rising. Number 11 sign is rising, Aquarius. For Aquarius rising, Jupiter will be placed in the third house. So you see here Jupiter in Aries in the third house. That's the third house. And Jupiter rules the 11th house and the second house. So let me mark that. So Jupiter rules the 11th house and the second house. Jupiter is actually a primary karaka for money in your chart for Aquarius rising. Both 11th house is financial gains and second house is the accumulated wealth. So the planet for money placed in the third house. And Jupiter is aspecting the 7th house. Jupiter is aspecting the 9th house, and Jupiter is aspecting the 11th house. So that's the full picture. So Jupiter is the ruler of 11th house and second house placed in the third house, and it's aspecting the 7th house, 9th house, and 11th house. Okay. So we'll analyze all of these 4 houses one by one. Third house has the aspect of Jupiter, and of course Jupiter is sitting there, and Rahu is sitting there until November, and it has the third aspect of Saturn throughout this duration. So until November, you have the aspect of Jupiter, Saturn, and Rahu, and after November, Jupiter and Saturn will be aspecting. Similar situation for the 7th house, Jupiter, Saturn, Rahu aspecting until November. After that, only Jupiter and Saturn will be aspecting your 7th house. The 9th house has influence of Ketu until November, and Ketu will move away to the sign of Virgo in November, after November, but you'll have the aspect of Jupiter throughout this duration on the 9th house. Finally, the 11th house has the aspect of Jupiter as well as Rahu, the 9th aspect on the 11th house until November. And once Rahu moves over to Pisces, then you'll just have pure aspect of Jupiter, the Guru, on the 11th house. So we'll see what that means. A couple of other dates to remember. Saturn goes retrograde from June 17th to November 4th. And Jupiter goes retrograde from September 4th to December 30th. During this period, you can assume that the planet is sitting in the previous sign when it's retrograde because it's moving backwards. So it has this tendency, this longing to go back to the previous sign. So you modify the analysis based on that. But in general, so let's analyze all the 4 houses one by one. First is it's the 11th Lord and the second Lord sitting in the third house. That means 11th and second both are money houses, and third house is the siblings or courage or skills. So you may actually gain a lot of money through your skills. You may get money from your younger sibling, or you may do something with your younger sibling that generates income. Your desires will be fulfilled. You'll do a lot of communication, a lot of processing of information. All of that will blossom because Jupiter is expansion and Aries is action. So you'll actually do action that gives you bigger and better things connected with the third house, especially after November, once Rahu moves away from there. But while Rahu is there, it gives you extra dose of courage. But be very careful. Don't be too rash in taking decisions because Rahu in the third house actually gives you extreme amount of courage, but also Jupiter in Aries in any way that's like action, immediate action. So be careful, don't jump the gun, don't take rash decisions, but very powerful, positive time for third house significations. 7th house, your relationships and one-on-one partnerships will have a boost, expansion, and because Rahu is also aspecting those, so be careful until November. There'll be positive opportunities, but don't take decisions very quickly. After November, though, both Jupiter and Saturn will be aspecting, so very likely that you may actually have a good that period will be extremely positive for solid results connected with relationships, one-on-one partnerships, maybe new partnerships or existing ones you may cement. You may actually heal and develop really close spiritually grounded relationships, one-on-one partnerships. And then let's look at the 9th house. The 9th house has Ketu sitting in it, right? So Ketu will give you and also Jupiter, both are very spiritual planets. So you may be very interested in higher studies. You may have connection with your father, spiritual connection with your father, and dharma and rituals and bhagya. Your bhagya will shine, your luck will shine. You'll feel more lucky, especially after November when Ketu moves to the previous sign of Virgo. Then you'll have expansion in all these areas of life. You may actually travel a lot to the distant places. Finally, the 11th house, financial gains and more social friends. You'll have more social activity. Your desires and ambitions will be fulfilled, especially after November when only Jupiter will be aspecting. So the ruler of the 11th house will be aspecting the 11th house. Extremely good time for expansion of 11th house significations after November. So that's the overall picture for Jupiter's transit in Aries for Aquarius rising. So now we'll see the impact of Jupiter's transit in the sign of Aries for Pisces rising. So Pisces is the number 12, the last sign of the zodiac. And this is chart for Pisces rising, number 12 sign rising. And so for Pisces rising, Jupiter will be placed in the second house. So you see Jupiter in Aries, number 1 is Aries. And Jupiter in the second house will become the ruler of 10th house and the first house. So let me mark those. So Jupiter is the ruler of the 10th house and is the Lagna Lord, the first house ruler. 10th house is Sagittarius and first house is Pisces, right? So it's a very positive period in general. Your Lagna Lord will be transiting through your second house. So, and it will be aspecting the 6th house, 8th house, and 10th house. Let me mark those. So Jupiter sitting in the second house is aspecting your 6th house and your 8th house, and it is aspecting your 10th house. Okay, so that's the full picture. So we'll analyze all these houses that are being impacted, aspected by Jupiter. The second house has Jupiter sitting in it, and of course, Rahu is sitting there until November. And then you have the Saturn's 12th aspect from Aquarius. Saturn is aspecting your second house. So you have the aspect of Jupiter, Saturn, and Rahu until November. And then after November, Rahu moves over to your Lagna, to Pisces. And so you'll be left with the aspect of Jupiter and Saturn in the second house. 6th house, exactly same situation. So until November, you have aspect of Jupiter, Saturn, and Rahu on the 6th house until November. After November, Rahu moves over here. So you'll be left with the aspect of Saturn and Jupiter. 8th house, it has Ketu sitting in it, and it has a direct aspect of Jupiter. So until November, but after November, Ketu will move over to your 7th house in Virgo. And then you'll be left with just the pure aspect of Jupiter on the 8th house. Similarly, for 10th house, you have currently, so from April through November, you'll have aspect of Jupiter and Rahu on your 10th house. It says here. And then after November, Rahu moves over to your Lagna, and then you'll have the pure aspect of Jupiter on your 10th house after November. Extremely powerful for career. We'll talk about that. A couple of other dates to remember. Saturn goes retrograde from June 17 to November 4th. And Jupiter goes retrograde September 4th through December 30th. During this period, you should modify these slightly. You can assume the planet goes to the previous sign or the previous house when they are retrograde. So you can analyze the chart that way. So let's look at those houses one by one. 10th Lord and the Lagna Lord, or the first Lord, placed in the second house. So a really powerful time for family, for business, especially family business, actually, because 10th Lord going to the second house means you may be doing some family business together. And good time for speech, very powerful speech, and reaching out to the masses, because Rahu and Jupiter both are expansion. So you will be, you can be a very good speaker, very powerful speaker during this time. Okay. And then 6th house. So Jupiter has a direct aspect, Rahu has an aspect, and Saturn has an aspect on the 6th house until November. One thing is, try not to take any new debts or loans that you think you may not be able to repay. Be very cautious. I mean, you don't have to stop doing what you're doing, but just be careful you read the fine print, you consult somebody before you take on, you know, any big debts or loans, things like that. But you'll be very you know, powerful in front of your enemies. Good time to take competitive exams. Good time for your pets, and good time for starting health routines, and good time to do service for other people. Sixth house is also connected with service for other people, and also your job may get a boost. And these things will actually become even better after November, when Rahu is no more aspecting your sixth house. Eighth house, well, Rahu in general gives good results in the sixth house, but with Jupiter and Saturn aspect in sixth house, you'll actually materialize those results for sixth house. The eighth house, Ketu is sitting there and Jupiter is aspecting. Eighth house is all about deep hidden spiritual things and change and transformation, research, and also money from other people, so and occult transformation. So all of that will get a big boost. So this is ideal time to go deep into like wondering, you know, who am I? You know, discovering the hidden secrets of the universe, things like that. So go deep in your esoteric studies. Excellent time for that. Throughout the year, actually, because Ketu there also gives you that push. Finally, the 10th house has aspect of Jupiter and Rahu until November. So this may actually give you a lot of expansion in your career. You may get promotion, and you may not feel very satisfied until November. You may want more and more and more because Rahu is aspecting until November. But then once Rahu goes away to sign of Pisces, then you'll truly get expansion in your career with Jupiter aspecting. It's a pure aspect of Jupiter on your 10th house after November. So this is overall impact of Jupiter's transit in Aries for Pisces rising. So that was a brief overview of Jupiter's transit through the sign of Aries and how that may impact each one of us, all the 12 rising signs. I hope you enjoyed it, and please give me feedback, any comments, and please do like and share and subscribe my channel. And thank you for watching. Namaste.